What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Cam ATL. Shout out to the DFS squad. Shout out to everybody watching this video right now. Drop a like down below because I already know you're gonna love it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure you comment anything down in the comment section to enter your name into the $50 giveaway that I do every single week on this channel. I hope you guys have had an amazing week. We are almost there to the weekend. So just one more day left. We can do it. All right. Now, if you're new to the channel, in the beginning of the week, I do a first look lineup vid where we kind of just mainly talk about the guys that we're putting in the lineup and then we build a lineup together. On this video is where we do the final look, where we break down every player we like position by position. Okay. So we're going to get a lot more in depth with this video. It's probably going to be, if I had to guess, about 20 minutes long. So go ahead and just relax, get comfortable, and let's get straight into it. Greenlightdfs.com, join the squad for week 12. All right, let's get it. Starting off at quarterback, the main man that I'm focused on is Matt Ryan at home in Atlanta going against Tampa Bay. And by the way, these are going to be in no particular order. Okay, I'm just going to talk about the guys I like. It could be, I could go from a 5,000 guy to a big guy. All right, just to let you know. All right, Matt Ryan going against Tampa Bay. Now, he had an amazing start to the season all the way up until week 6. He was unstoppable. He was doing amazing, okay? The record of the Falcons was not showing it, but he was doing really, really well. Then he missed a few games, and then when he came back, he turned the whole morale of this Atlanta team around. The defense has been playing better, period. They've just been really, really good now, and he hasn't really been putting up the numbers that he was in the beginning of the year, but that's completely okay because we know what he's capable of, and he's capable of a 30-piece or more here against Tampa Bay. You got to understand, Kyler Murray dropped over 30. Russell Wilson got over 42. Ryan Tannehill almost got 20. Okay? Matt Ryan's in an amazing spot, and when it comes to picking quarterbacks that I love, obviously matchup against a bad secondary is always a plus, but if they are at home and in a dome, that's even more of a plus. So Matt Ryan is at home in Atlanta. It is a dome, which is always a plus for quarterbacks. So he is probably my top quarterback option on the slate that I'm really, really interested in. All right. Another guy that I really like this week is going to be Baker Mayfield. Baker is at home in Cleveland going against Miami. All right. Now, Miami has been absolutely horrible. Okay, this year they have been atrocious, but one thing about them is they've actually been putting points on the board lately. So maybe they can keep this game somewhat close enough to make Baker have to do enough to hit value at 5.9. All right? I mean, if you look at the quarterbacks who have faced him, they haven't really faced any big time, like Josh Allen last week they faced, okay? They gave up over 33 Draftkings points to Allen. Now, Mayfield's not on Allen's level as of right now. Okay, but you got to understand, they gave up over 17 to Mason Rudolph. Okay, so if they can give up over 17 to Mason Rudolph, then Baker Mayfield's in a good spot, and he's been playing really well like the last 3 weeks. He's been doing a really good job, and at home in Cleveland in a really soft matchup against Miami, I really like Baker Mayfield. He's a solid option if you want to spend down. Another guy around that price range that I want to talk about is Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston traveling to Atlanta. He is also getting that benefit of being in a dome. He's not at home, but he is in a dome going against a bad Atlanta secondary. They have stepped their game up the last few weeks, though, giving up only 11 to Drew Brees, 12 to Kyle Allen. Now, but you got to understand, I don't believe all of a sudden they've just turned a corner and they're an amazing secondary, okay? I think Jameis Winston is going to expose them. His entire career, he has done really well against Atlanta, averaging over 20 points every single game he's played them in. And he's had the upside of, like last year, he got 35 and 34 in the 2 games he faced Atlanta. So he does really well against this Atlanta team, and this Atlanta secondary is even more beat up than it was last season. So Jameis Winston's in a great spot at 6'2". All right, another guy I want to talk about is Derek Carr against the Jets. Carr has been pretty damn solid. He's been a little bit of a roller coaster, getting as low as like 8 DraftKings points in a game, and then his upside's about 23, which is what he did. That's his highest that he's gotten all year. That's about the highest you're going to get out of Derek Carr because Josh Jacobs has been doing really good on the ground. So there's really no need for them to have to, do too much through the air, but Daniel Jones dropped over 34 against this Jets team. Fitzpatrick dropped over 23. Minshew got over 24. This is just a great matchup for Derek Carr. This Jets secondary has been really, really bad. They've been doing okay against the run this year, but they have been really, really bad through the air. So Derek Carr, the Jets do seem to step it up a little bit defensively when they're at home in New York, so that is something to keep in mind. But Derek Carr is fine. I would definitely rather Jameis Winston for only 100 more, though. All right, who else do I want to talk about? Let's talk about Carson Wentz. Okay, now Wentz is one of the quarterbacks in the league who I just don't really like. I think he's a little bit overrated. It's not like everybody talks about Carson Wentz, but I do believe he's a little bit overrated. But either way, no matter how it goes, he's going against Seattle, who is not the Legion of Doom anymore. Or Legion of Boom, my bad. Legion of Boom anymore, okay? Jameis dropped over 24. Matt Schaub dropped over 25. Lamar Jackson did what he always does. Baker Mayfield over 22. So Carson Wentz is in a definite plus matchup against Seattle. I can see 20 or more DraftKings points here. And at 5.6, that's a good return for his price. All right? He will have to throw against Seattle as well. You'd think Seattle's going to be able to get up against this bad Philly secondary, and Wentz is going to have to throw. And him being at home is definite plus. All right? Another guy I want to talk about is Jeff Driscoll. I mentioned him a little bit when I did the first look lineup. He's been really, really good. 19 and 27 in the 2 games he started this year. Now he gets to go against Washington, which is by far the worst defense he's faced since he's got back, and he still has gotten 19 and 20. He got 19 against the good Chicago D. Then he dropped 27 against Dallas, and now he gets to go against Washington, who just gave up almost 27 to Darnold. Jeff Driscoll has been having to throw a ton because they don't have a run game. So I absolutely love this dude, man. He's going to throw the ball a lot, and I can see him having another really solid game. So at 5.5, I think you can do worse than Jeff Driscoll. All right. Who else have I really been keeping an eye on? You can go Russell Wilson against Philly. That is a fine matchup for my boy Wilson. Only issue with Wilson most of the time is he has huge upside on certain games, like 44 against New Orleans earlier this year, and then he dropped another 42 against Tampa Bay. Issue is some games they just turn to the run and just pound it a bunch. Now, the plus side of Wilson this week is that the run might be a little tough against this Philly D, who is pretty solid versus the run, but they give it up to the pass. They gave up over 31 to Kirk Cousins. Okay, so Wilson could have another big game. So I really like him too at 6.8. I still honestly would prefer Matt Ryan. He's the main guy that I'm looking to target this week when it comes to quarterbacks. Anybody else that I want to mention real quick, just make sure I don't forget anybody. Drew Brees against Carolina is fine at 6.6. He is at home. Drew Brees, when he's at home, is always good, even though he sucked against Atlanta in Week 10. That's okay. He's at home going against Carolina. It's a great situation for Drew Brees. Sam Darnold against the bad Oakland secondary is also an okay option. Honestly, on this slate, the way I'm seeing it is you're going to go Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, or you spend down if you want to save some money and go with a Jeff Driscoll is a sneaky way to go this week against Washington. I think he's easily going to hit value at 5.5, and I think he's a solid option if you really have to save money and spend down, or you could go Baker Mayfield as well. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. Matt Ryan or Jameis, or if I want to spend down, probably Driscoll, Wentz, or Mayfield. That's probably where I'd stay there. All right? Now let's go ahead and talk about running backs. At the running back position, now one guy I really want to talk about is Alvin Kamara at home in New Orleans going against Carolina. Now, he has came back after that few games that he missed due to injury. He got 15 against Atlanta and then 22 against Tampa Bay. Now, the bright side of this, okay, is that he has had 10 targets in each of the last 2 games. He's gotten 20 targets the last 2 games. 18 catches in those 2 games. So obviously they're trying to get Alvin Kamara the ball in the pass game, and that's always good because on DK it's full point PPR. So Alvin Kamara is one of the guys that I really, really like at running back this week. Christian McCaffrey is going against a toughish New Orleans Saints D that has done really, really good against running backs this year. I'm not sure if I will be paying that 10.5 for him this week. I have been just forcing him in this so far. this year because he's just got the most solid floor in cash games. You really can't go wrong. So if you just have that extra money, then McCaffrey is fine, obviously. In no way am I saying I don't like McCaffrey. But for the savings this week, I might lean a little bit towards Kamara at 8-2. He is one of the guys I'm really, really interested in. All right, another guy that could be sneaky this week that I think a lot of people might not be on, but it's very, very sneaky, is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry. We all know what he's capable of. This dude's got huge upside, like the 36 he dropped against Kansas City week 10. All right, but week 9, 24, week 10, 36. They had their bye week. They're coming back. Now, obviously, the best way to go here against this Jacksonville team is to kill him on the ground, man. Control the clock. Kill him on the ground at home in Tennessee. Marlon Mack almost got 20. Like, if Marlon Mack can do it, Derrick Henry can do it. And at 6'9", Henry's got some big upside here, especially if they end up deciding, okay, we're definitely going to give Henry 20-plus touches here against Jacksonville. And he should be in a great spot here. All right, so good matchup against Jacksonville. Now, I will not be playing him, but in GPPs, he's a little bit interesting because he could possibly explode. I could see a way that Nick Chubb has a huge game, all right? I could see a scenario where Cleveland gets up big against Miami, and that offense that Miami team's not able to keep it close like they've been trying to do lately. And so Cleveland could get up big and use a ton of Nick Chubb, all right? And they've been giving him the ball a ton. All right, he got 27 carries last week. So Nick Chubb is a very solid option. All right, another guy actually on the same team, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some extra run if they get the lead as well, is Kareem Hunt. They've been utilizing him as well in the pass game. 9 targets week 10, 8 targets week 11. Kareem Hunt is really interesting just solely off the attempts he gets in the pass game. Because it's DK PPR, especially if Miami can keep this game close. And if Cleveland dominates Miami, you can expect Kareem Hunt to get a little extra run on the ground, get him a little acclimated, get him warmed up a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Kareem Hunt this week. All right, another guy I really want to mention is Jalen Samuels. Now, James Conner is expected to miss, and Juju Schuster is also expected to miss this game. That is a huge bump to Jalen Samuels, okay? Not only is he going to get some okay targets on the ground, I wouldn't expect 20. He's not going to get 20-something carries. That's just not the running back Jalen Samuels is. But he could get you 15 carries, but then add on like that 10-plus potential in targets. He got 13 targets in week 9 when James Conner missed, and that was with Juju Schuster there. Without Juju Schuster, I can see a scenario where they lean super heavily on Jalen Samuels, and the matchup can't get much better against Cincinnati, to be completely real with you. So Jalen Samuels, I feel like a lot of people might be off of him because you got Le'Veon Bell for almost 1,000 less than him, which is pretty drastic. But at the end of the day, in GPP, he's very interesting. In cash games even, if you have the money, the dude's got a very good floor just off the amount of targets he's going to see in the pass game in this game. Like, just because Juju's out, Deontay Johnson is going to be a solid option, obviously. You've got James Washington there for Pittsburgh as well. Both those guys are going to see a bump, but the biggest bump, honestly, if I had to guess, would be Jalen Samuels. And I don't really believe that's much of a guess. It's definitely going to be a lot of Jalen Samuels this week. So you can do worse than Jalen this week. All right, let's talk about some other guys. Let's talk Le'Veon Bell. Now, I put Le'Veon Bell in the first look lineup because the dude has been on the field at the top of the league when it comes to being on the field more than anyone else, pretty much. Outside of Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, those guys who are just crazily on the field. All right, but Le'Veon just gets tons of opportunities. I can see a scenario where the Jets are behind here against Oakland. Regardless of how the game script goes, Le'Veon Bell is good. If the Jets get up, they're going to pound it against Oakland with Le'Veon. If they get behind, they're going to throw the ball to Le'Veon. I'm still waiting for that big game out of Le'Veon Bell because outside of him, Demaryius Thomas, Jamison Crowder, they have nobody. Okay, so they really got to lean on these superstars to really make something happen. They haven't been too good this year. They've only gotten 3 wins all year. Expect them to start leaning on Le'Veon now at the end of the season and really start getting them warmed up for next year. And I can see him. He's probably going to have a huge game here, one of these games closing out the season. So obviously we're not closing out the season yet. We're only in week 12, but I'm saying sometime before now and the end of the season, he's going to have a breakout performance. And against Oakland here, it could definitely happen. And at 6'4", almost 1,000 less than Samuels, he's very interesting for sure. All right. Now, who else do we want to talk about? I mentioned Philip Lindsay in the first look. He was back at practice. He was limited, but he's expected to play in Week 12. It is a good position for him. He's going to get a ton of work here, and he gets a ton of looks in the pass game as well. Lately, he hasn't, though. The last 2 weeks, 0 targets Week 9, only 2 targets Week 11. That bothers me some. But at the end of the day, he's going to be the main guy getting the ball, going against Buffalo, who has been okay versus the run, but they gave up almost 13 to Balaj, and Lindsay is a whole nother animal. Okay, so at 5'2", you can do worse than Balaj. All right? Than Lindsay. All right, I talked about Ronald Jones in the first look as well. Ronald Jones is interesting to me. I feel like a lot of people are going to be off of him because he burned them big time last week. But at the end of the day, he's going against Atlanta, guys. All right, and now Atlanta's secondary has been okay, but defensively against running backs, they have still struggled. And this is a guy who got 8 targets Week 10. Don't forget that. He can get some exposure in that pass game, especially if Atlanta gets up big. I can see Jones having a huge performance, and only 4.8 is it's very interesting. All right, I do like Ronald Jones a lot. All right, now next guy that let's talk about. Let's go ahead and talk about. Devontae is probably going to miss once again, so Brian Hill is probably going to be a guy that I won't be playing, but if you want to take another chance on him, a lot of people will be off of him, especially against Tampa Bay, who's been okay versus the run. They did show some signs of weakness last week with Kamara carving him up pretty well, but he also got a ton of catches in the pass game. That had to do with a lot of his points as well. But Chris Carson got over 17. Brian Hill's not those guys. I don't see a big performance here. But nobody's going to be on him, okay? Nobody is going to be on him, and he still is a guy who is literally the only running back on this team, all right? So just keep that in mind in GPPs. It's definitely interesting. Another guy that I want to talk about is, let me find him, Darius Geis. It is a very interesting play here, okay? He's going to have to, Chris Thompson's back. He's going to have to deal with that, and that's not good. But I can see him possibly falling into the end zone. At 4.7, I still would kind of want a little more. So, honestly, you don't have to get this desperate, okay? Period. I shouldn't even be talking about him. I'm getting a little too deep now. All right? At the end of the day, you either pay all the way up for McCaffrey if you have the money. He is the safest, probably going to score the most points of any running back this week. Alvin Kamara is really the way to go if you want a beast and you can't afford McCaffrey. Don't worry, Kamara is a fine play. And then you want to probably pair Kamara up with a guy like Jalen Samuels, who's in an amazing spot. They're without 2 big usage guys on that team. Derrick Henry for GPPs is interesting. Le'Veon's a good cash running back. And really, those are the main guys you want to stay with. All right. At wide receiver this week, my 2 guys I really like is Julio Jones and Mike Evans. All right. I just really love this game. I really, really love this game. I want some exposure to Atlanta. I want some exposure to some Tampa Bay guys. In Julio and Evans, I will be trying my hardest to get both of those guys in the lineup. Now, obviously, you always got to think it could be Godwin's week. Godwin could go off or whatever. You never know. At the end of the day, I trust Mike Evans a bit more. He's got some huge upside, and he's the type of guy that could drop 40 or more here against Atlanta, against Isaiah Oliver, who's been struggling a ton. I mean, gave up over 31 to Michael Thomas, over 17 to DJ Moore last week. Mike Evans is going to smash. All right, so I really, really like Evans. Julio is a beast. I don't really have to get into that too much. Another guy I really like on Atlanta is Calvin Ridley at 6'5". His price did jump up pretty nicely, a whole 1,000. But it makes sense. The dude got 8 catches, 143 yards last week. I mentioned we put him in the first look lineup last week. I mentioned because Sanu is out now, expect Ridley to get a lot of attention. Him and Gage are 2 guys that are going to get a lot more targets now with Sanu out, okay? So obviously I prefer Julio Jones, especially for only 1,500 more. But Calvin is definitely interesting. Like if let's say you set your lineup and you're down to your final position and you can't afford Julio, but you want an Atlanta guy, Ridley's the way to go, okay? Ridley is perfectly fine if you can't get Julio. But my first instinct would be try to get Julio, try to pair him up with Mike Evans or Godwin if you think it's a Godwin week. I think it's an Evans week, but if you think it's a Godwin week, then that's fine. But I definitely would probably get an Atlanta receiver and a Tampa Bay receiver, and that's the game plan for this week. Next up, we've got a few Cleveland wide receivers that are interesting, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. Both of these guys are going against Miami. The only thing with these guys that you have to worry about is they've both been limited participants in practice all week. They will play, but they're a little hobbled. You know what I mean? So with that in mind and the fact that Cleveland's probably not going to have to air it out too much, I'm not going to have much exposure to Odell and Jarvis Landry solely on just the way I see game script most likely going here against Miami. I don't see a need for it. But keep in mind that John Brown went for over 37 against Miami last week. Okay? And that's ridiculous. So Odell, I mean, I can't imagine what Odell could do in this matchup, in that scenario. But that's if he's healthy, obviously. All right? Obviously, Michael Thomas against Carolina. If you can afford it, go ahead. I'm okay with saving the money from Thomas and going Julio. I'm not going to be spending up for Michael Thomas too much this week, but he's definitely a good cash wide receiver. He's the safest guy in the entire league. His lowest performance was 16 this year, and he's got the upside of 44 like he did against Tampa Bay week 5, which is the potential Julio has this week against Tampa Bay. He could smash them. Anyway, some other guys. DJ Chark had a great game last week with 33 against the Colts. He's going to get some better looks now with Foles back for Jacksonville, so he's a good bet as well. Taylor Gabriel against Janoris Jenkins is a great play. Allen Robinson for Chicago is also a great play. Hunter Renfrow is a sneaky option against the Jets. Now, if you have Derek Carr, if you're playing GPP, you have Derek Carr in, and you want a cheap guy to pair him with, then Hunter Renfrow would be the guy I would consider at 4-5. He's been getting some good targets, and he has gotten 2 touchdowns the last 4 games, and he's been super solid. His lowest is 8 points the last 4 weeks. Okay, so at 4-5, he's a solid option. Let's talk about who else am I interested in. I've really talked about all the guys that I'm really have interest in this week. DJ Moore is interesting. He should escape Lattimore, but we'll see how that works. Maybe Lattimore will be on him. And Samuel will have the huge game, but either way. Philip Dorsett against Dallas is interesting. I'm just going to go over a few more. We've talked about the main guys that we have interest in this week. Yeah, I mean, maybe some Jets receivers if you want to get sneaky, like Crowder. Maybe Crowder is a little interesting. But outside of that, target Tampa Bay, target Atlanta. Odell Beckham is good for GPPs. Him and Jarvis are interesting because, I mean, if this game stays close against Miami, it's very interesting in GPPs. They have some huge upside potential. If you have the money, Michael Thomas is fine. I'd rather save with Julio. Allen Robinson is a great play, as well as I just mentioned him a second ago. What was his name? Whatever. Him and the other Chicago receiver. I'm blanking on his name. All right. Let's talk about tight ends real quick, and then we will go ahead and finish this off with defense. All right. Now, when it comes to tight end this week, there's a few guys that I'm looking into, and there's a solid little gap between the rest of the guys. All right. Now, first guy that I really like here is Zach Ertz against Seattle. I talked about them probably having to play catch-up here against Seattle. In the last 2 weeks, Ertz has looked like Ertz. 11 targets in each of the last 2 games. That's 22 targets in 2 games. And 18 catches for 103 yards receiving in 1 game, and then 94 the next. Almost got two 100-yard receiving games in a row. Now he's going against Seattle, who gave up over 18 to Austin Hooper. Zach Ertz is a very solid option at 6,000. He's finally coming around in a game where Philly should have to throw a lot here. I really like Zach Ertz this week. Another guy that I really like is Vance McDonald at 3.5. Now, there's a lot of targets to go around here, and expect them to target Jalen Samuels type of guys on those little routes that they don't trust their quarterback to throw it deep. Plus, he just got hit in the head with his own helmet. The dude's not comfortable to throw it deep right now. He's probably going to be terrified of guys coming around the edge this week. He's going to dump it off short passes. So Vance McDonald, Jalen Samuels, those guys are great options this week. Vance at 3.5. he, like I said, good amount of targets in a very good matchup against Cincinnati, and he is a guy that I'm paying a lot of attention to this week. Outside of that, obviously, you have the guys who are always projected to be the higher scoring guys, like Darren Waller's a good option. Ryan Griffin's an option. Greg Olsen against New Orleans. If you're going to attack New Orleans, Lattimore's very solid. You can get them with the tight end with Greg Olsen. That is an interesting play. That's probably one of the openings they're going to see a lot against New Orleans. Jason Witten against New England. I talked about how they could really focus on trying to stop Ezekiel Elliott and Amari Cooper. So it's a really good situation for Jason Witten to find some holes. Dallas Goedert is in a great spot. So that's really it, though. I'm really trying to get Vance McDonald. If I don't need the money, I'm gonna go Zach Ertz if I don't need the money. Vance McDonald, if I need the money, is perfectly fine as well. Those are the two main guys that I'm focused on, Ertz and Vance McDonald. Vance McDonald is super interesting at 3-5 against Cincinnati. Because it's in Cincinnati, I think Cincinnati can keep it close, especially with Pittsburgh dealing with all these injuries. They might even be behind in this game. So I really like Jalen Samuels and Vance McDonald. All right, last but not least, let's go ahead and talk about the defenses real quick, and then I'll let you guys go. First deal I want to talk about is the Pittsburgh Steelers going against Cincinnati. Now, they are the most expensive, but they have been really, really good. They struggled against Cleveland last week, but they have been really solid. All right, really solid all year. They scored 25 against the Rams, 19 before that, 13 before that, 14 before that. Like, they have been super consistent, super solid. Now they're going against Cincinnati with a backup quarterback. Have not been good at all this year. Steelers are a definite good option. Another option that I really like is the New England Patriots. Now, I know Dallas's offense isn't one you really want to target too much, but at the end of the day, Dak does make mistakes and does throw picks, and I think the Patriots can definitely take advantage of that, okay? So it's a great matchup for them. They've been super, super solid this year. Don't forget that these guys are like let me just give you some of the scores. 37 week 2, 25 week 4, 27 week 6, 25 week 7, 21 week 8. Like, these dudes are at home, and they have been a ridiculous daily fantasy defense, and they have dropped to 3-3. We haven't gotten them at 3-3 all year other than week 1. Okay? So take advantage of the Patriots being so cheap. And then the Cleveland Browns are interesting against Miami because obviously there is a scenario where Miami struggles big time against the Browns. I am leaning mainly, honestly. I know Dallas is going to score, but I think the Patriots can hit value pretty easily at 3-3, or I'm spending up for the Steelers. I like those two defenses the most. Those are the two Ds that I am really zoned in on. Another defense that you can consider would be the Lions defense, because Haskins loves to throw interceptions, and they're probably going to be playing from behind, so Detroit should be able to get some picks in this game and maybe return one to the house, so that's interesting at 3-1. For some cheap Ds, there's really nobody I'm interested in, to be honest. I'm not punting super low on defense this week. If I'm spending down, I'm going the Patriots. If I'm spending up, I'm going the Steelers. Plain and simple. All right? Thank you guys for joining me as always, man. I hope I was able to answer all those questions that you've been thinking about this week. A few receivers that I didn't talk about. I mentioned when I talked about Jalen Samuels. Deontay Johnson and James Washington, both of those guys get solid bumps. Their prices are kind of up there. Like, they're a little bit uncomfortable with the prices. I'd probably rather Samuels over the other two. If I had to choose which guy I wanted from that Pittsburgh offense with these guys injured, it would be Jalen Samuels 100%. He's going to get a ton of targets in the pass game. He's going to get everything on the ground. Connor's out. Juju's out. And their quarterback just got beat up and hit in the head with his own helmet. Okay? If you think this guy's not terrified to get tackled again, you are crazy, okay? He is going to be dumping it off, tiny little short passes just to get the ball out of his hand this week, all right? And it's a very good matchup against Cincinnati, so expect Samuels to really shine. I just wanted to mention that again because even the more I've talked about it during this video, I've really fallen more and more in love with Jalen Samuels this week because it just seems like a week where Samuels is going to smash. All right, thank you guys for joining me as always. GreenlightDFS.com, join the squad.